Welcome to Santa Barbara Talks with Josh Molina. I am here today with Santa Barbara County 1st District Supervisor Doss Williams, and we have a lot to talk about. I've been writing some stories about Doss lately, which is not that new if you look at the history of my career. And I've been talking about him a lot more lately after a meeting that was a little bit interesting and intriguing to watch. But before we get there, Doss Williams, thank you for being on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing all right. We got a lot of stuff we're dealing with at the county very early in the year. So
Right. Yeah, time flies, and here we are, 2023. Hey, Doss, I want to just talk to you because I've spilled a lot of figurative ink on the SBCAG meeting and this effort by the city of Santa Barbara to fund a specific plan, which was about $1.1 million. And their idea was, hey, we want to redevelop La Cumbre Plaza, and we're going to submit this application to get state funding. And we're going to look at this and all these different property owners and these parcels, and we're going to work together with the school districts, look at a traffic congestion, new traffic patterns, housing, and we're going to plan for this whole area. And so this is a big project. We know specific plans happen kind of rarely, and they wanted the money from the state. However, the SBCAG board said no. Randy Rouse, mayor of Santa Barbara, was the only one who was in support of it. And you, as the chair, sort of had the most time on the mic, kind of explaining your perspective. And so I want to just start there. Why did you feel the need to not fund the city of Santa Barbara's specific plan for an overall up to 2,000 housing units potentially, and instead kind of lend support to the Taylor family project, which is about 700 units? What was going through your mind there in terms of why that was the better path?
the basic question was just whether a specific plan would speed up the development of housing or whether it would slow it down or have no effect. And the reality, the criteria of the grant, the purpose of the grant would be to speed up housing or electrification of housing. And so if that doesn't meet the criteria of the grant, then we shouldn't fund it. So we can debate whether a specific plan is appropriate or not, but that's not what the decision was about. The decision was the city asking for money for something that didn't meet the criteria of the grant. And that ultimately was our conclusion, that they hadn't offered enough evidence that this would actually speed up construction of housing. In fact, they basically admitted that it wouldn't speed up the Taylor project. So maybe the whole logic was based on hope that by doing a specific plan, they would speed up the remaining property owners to make a decision about going forward into housing, without offering any evidence that that would do that, right? I mean, the real question here is, do a bunch of property owners in a long-term lease suddenly figure out that they're going to get out of that long-term lease to build housing because the county does a specific plan or because the city does a specific plan? That would be the only way we could fund that grant. And they didn't even come with a timeline. It seems like the other issue was whether state law permitted something that went over the height limits. They didn't come with any kind of legal opinion. They didn't bring lawyers. We didn't blindside them. We told them the day before that they have to come with evidence, and they came with no evidence.
Okay. So as somebody who's covered you forever, since 2003 or whenever you ran for council back in the day, and obviously we're not the same people we were back then, but you worked for the city. You were on the council for 7 years, I believe it was. That's pretty strong. Okay. Yeah. Those comments, that language. Are you essentially saying the city planners, Dan Golet, I guess we shouldn't name names here, just out of politeness, but are you essentially saying the city planners came to the meeting unprepared to convince the board to go in this direction? I mean, is that what you're saying, that it was not a valid effort on their part?
Yeah, I was giving them the benefit of the doubt. That's why I call them idealistic. I mean, I do think that city planners have a really hard job. And I personally feel like the city and county planning is one of the most noble jobs that you could do. But if their purpose was to embolden more housing development, I personally thought that they didn't bring us any evidence that that's what it would do.
Okay.
And I'm not the only one. Those 9 other SBCAG board members, some of whom felt more strongly than I did, opposed to funding something that, in their view, smacked of some kind of hypocrisy. Right? We're gonna take $1 million that could be used to construct housing or to speed up the construction of housing, and we're going to use it to slow down housing. That's what a lot of my colleagues seem to come to the conclusion was what the effort was. So I actually gave the folks involved the benefit of the doubt that maybe they just erred in their logic instead of assuming that they were cynically opposing or slowing down the project.
Yeah. And it makes sense that the North County supervisors are going to say, or they're going to look at that project with the most extreme critical eye, because that's $1.1 million that can fund charging stations, in Orcutt or in North County. So it makes sense. There's a little bit of a tug of war there in terms of the dollars. I guess
it's more about something else, Josh. It's more about, in the North County and all across the state of California, people view us as, in South County, as hypocrites. They know we talk about environmentalism and saving the world all the time, and that we ostensibly believe in it. But they then think that our actions do not match our ideals. And as you know, my mission in life is to get this community to act in accordance to our ideals on the environment and on protecting people. And so, I think that's where that was coming from, because most of the money was redirected to another South County project. In fact, it's one that can increase walking and bicycle commuting in Goleta. So so it wasn't for the majority of the money didn't go back to North County projects, even though one of the board members tried to open up the door to that.
Yeah. What about this other counter argument, and I think the thing that I stick on with this, okay, is as Josh, who's covered DOS, you have always been the positive dude, the optimistic dude. You've been the idealistic dude. Like, you've been the guy who's said, yeah, we can spend all day fighting, but unless we work together and come together, we're not going to be able to come out of this with a solution that everybody is okay with. And that's what compromise is about. That's always been you. And so for me, like, my head literally just kind of freezes when I hear you say, the city has a reputation for slowing things down. I mean, they've approved these AUD units. They've approved hundreds of units. There's hundreds of more in the pipeline. But it's more of, why not take an approach, Doss, of hey, we need to work together with the Taylor family. So what you city of Santa Barbara, you need to come up with a specific plan that does not slow down this project. Because yes, we do want a holistic approach. We don't want to just have this great looking project facing State Street and then everything behind it is still parking lot forever. Did it not make sense, or is there a path, or would you consider saying, let's do both? Let's work harder here. We're Santa Barbara. You know, you've fought in the trenches with the city of Santa Barbara staff people for years. You know what that is like. But is there not a more like DOS-like approach to be like, let's do both. Let's fund this, but this comes with a condition, which is work with the Taylor family to not slow down their project. I think we can do it. I think you can do it. I think this board can be helpful to it. Instead, it seems as though we're going to have all these problems. Like we had the Hope School District talking about traffic congestion. You got Eric Friedman mad. You've got Randy Rouse mad. There's a couple other members of the council who are upset. And I don't know. It just seemed not DOS-like for you to be so, let's make a fight out of this, at least from my perspective.
Well, I mean, I brought up this with Eric months ago. So he's actually the first person who should have known that I had some real questions about it. And I still think if they want to do a specific plan on the non-Taylor portion of La Cumbre Plaza, there's some benefits to that. I definitely acknowledge that. But the question, my job is to determine whether it would actually fit the criteria of the grant. It's dishonest for me to award money for something that does the opposite of what the grant is supposed to be for. So to me, working together would be processing the permit and building housing as quickly as possible. The survival of another generation of Santa Barbarans, the economic survival of another generation of Santa Barbarans is wholly dependent upon that. La Cumbre Plaza is something that Bandy White and I talked about incessantly the entire time we were on council, that this is the most important place, most exciting place to ultimately be able to address our community's housing needs. And the Taylors have put forward a project that is all rental. So it could substantially help the workforce demographic, the younger demographic that we absolutely need in this community. So for me, the reason why, I care is because I very much think that development of housing at La Cumbre Plaza is crucial for the survival of this community. So if they still want a specific plan for the non-Taylor portion of it, I could see the logic of that. But the Taylors definitely don't want to be part of a specific plan. So how would that be everyone working together to force a property owner to have a specific plan on their property?
I guess,
so this is not a kumbaya. The city is going to be in the position of having to fight either the people who want to build the housing or the people who want to be against the housing. And it seems to me that the city is positioning itself to fight against the people who want to build the housing. And I think that's fundamentally an error. I think that's fundamentally wrong. I think right now, the courage and the side of moral consistency is to build housing. We can't with one mouth say, we want to reduce carbon emissions, we want to save the environment, but then force people to live farther and farther and farther away from their jobs and destroy the environment. That's what we've done for 30 years. We've said one thing, which is that we care about this earth, that we care about our community, and that we want to save the environment, but our actions have produced the opposite result. There is a time when we have to recognize that, and we have to fight to build housing right here and to do it as quickly as possible.
I mean, I agree with everything you said there, but I guess this is what's challenging for me is I don't think it applies right now. I mean, I don't think you can say with a straight face that the city has not tried to build housing since 2013 with the AUD program. I mean, I know this is not in Goleta, but Goleta's built a ton of housing. I guess remember Dan Secord? He used to say on the council, he'd say,
I do. I fondly remember Dan Secord.
Yeah, Dr. Secord, he used to say, I'd rather do it right than right now. Of course, Dan was a Republican, so he probably was not big on the housing, at least, the way you are.
Dan was a pretty reasonable guy most of the time. I'm not sure that in the era of Trump, Dan would have remained a Republican.
Oh, I'm sure he would have ran from Trump, like a lot of Republicans have. But this idea that the Taylor Project is going to be the savior of housing, as opposed to let's get 2,000 units as opposed to 700, I think is a debate worth having. And then I also just worry that the city of Santa Barbara, the planners, the council, I worry that you're making new enemies, honestly, too, when you're doing that, because they're over there, they're going to hear what you're saying, they've heard what you've said, and they're going to say, how could he say that? Right? Like how could he actually throw us under the bus like that? But obviously everything you said is true. We need more housing. We need more housing for the next generation of people. You and I know, as people who grew up in this community, that people we knew don't live here, right? If you know somebody who went to Ivy Elementary or DP who actually owns a home in this town, it's rare. There's a couple of people that have been able to do it, but most of them have moved. So I get all that. I think it's part of it is the DOS that I know. This seems a little different on here, but maybe it's just maybe it's just me. Maybe I need to sort of understand that you can be for housing, but yet not think this specific plan is the right path legally. Although the scoring committee did recommend it, and it was recommended to the board for approval. So I don't want to get too into the weeds there, but I mean, as though
there's new information that came out between then and before that and then, which was that there was an actual application. It's much different to do a specific plan when nobody's proposed anything versus do a specific plan that could be inconsistent with the developer-based application that was going in. Right. I just think the aspect of this that you have to realize is that staffing levels with planning is so insufficient right now. And this doesn't just go for city and county staff, but it also is with consultants, that it's a limited pool of folks. So if you have two planners working on a specific plan, it's literally two planners that won't be working on processing applications. So I just fail to understand logistically how that speeds up housing development. Right now, we don't have enough planners to actually process applications. So how does that make sense to then throw more staff into a specific plan? That question wasn't answered, and we put these questions to them the day before, because at SBCAG we meet as subcommittees beforehand. So we were really clear. You guys have to show us evidence that this goes faster. And I don't think the evidence was there. But if your critique was that I could have been more positive, absolutely, that I'll take that, mea culpa, because the city until last year has done a good job. And of course, myself and Helene, we were both there during and made some of the zoning changes, initiated those changes that led to the AUD program. And so I obviously am invested in the production of rental housing in Santa Barbara, which I do think is crucial for its, for the survival of diversity, for its ethic consistency, et cetera. I just don't think that this was done right. And if I call people idealistic, to me, that's giving people the benefit of the doubt instead of calling them cynical, right? Because a lot of my colleagues viewed this as a very cynical move to get $1 million from us that's meant to speed up housing and then to slow down housing with it. I didn't view it that way because I do see the people believing particularly in the planning department, believing in the production of housing that's appropriate for our workforce. I am also disturbed at the trend, the anti-housing trend at the city in the last year. And maybe that was some of the pushback that you saw. The lack of willingness to rein in design boards that are, I think, clearly breaking the law, because design boards are not supposed to be making decisions that reduce the number of units in a housing project. That's a decision for a planning commission or a council. It's not a decision for a design review board. And the fact that the new downtown plan for housing was rejected and hasn't been replaced with something else. I'm scared. I'm scared that the momentum on providing rental housing in the city is going to be lost.
I mean, is that because of Randy's mayor and there's a new direction that might have been at the top when Kathy was there?
I hope Randy will be pro-business, and I don't understand how you could be pro-business without being, supportive of workforce housing. But I do think that the change in leadership might have had something to do with it. But I'm scared. I'm scared for the future of Santa Barbara. That just when we were, moving in the right direction to try to provide enough rental housing to bring that market down or to reduce the growth of out of control rents, that we might lose momentum right now. And I think if you ask anybody that actually builds housing, they'll probably agree with you that the city is not moving fast enough and that we've lost some momentum.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. I mean, everything you're saying is true. It's just weird to hear it coming out of your mouth because, I mean, it's a very developer perspective. And, I was thinking if it wasn't the Taylor family, right, who has a really good reputation, and Ben Romo, who is a very well connected with all the electeds, wasn't representing them and working it behind the scenes. Like if this was Ed St. George proposing this specific plan at Cumbre Plaza, I guarantee you, right, it would not be the same reaction. I guarantee you. So as somebody who's a journalist who's covered City Hall for so long and government, it feels like it's one of those policy decisions. It's like, well, the Taylors are good, so we're going to go for it, as opposed to what you're supposed to do in government, which is plan for the future. But you've made yourself clear. I think we just sort of disagree, but I hear what you're saying on the issue. I like idealistic DOS. That's the DOS I know.
Yeah, but if they were proposing, I think this is idealistic. If they were proposing a bunch of luxury housing for sale housing, I would try to kick the crap out of it like I used to, right? But I think they're proposing something really exciting, which is rental units with a large amount being price controlled affordable and a large number being affordable by design. I mean, isn't it idealistic to be enthusiastic about something and not just want to kick the crap out of it? you know, so you know, and then the other difference, Josh, is I'm informed by data, right? You know, I mean, the crucial thing that should shake us to our core as a community is that we got into sort of this slow growth thing because we wanted to protect the environment. But the data's come in. All we've done is created leapfrog development in other communities. We've by not building housing in the city of Santa Barbara, we've created massive amount of leapfrog development in other communities, and those people drive farther and farther to work, and that's the source of 55% of the carbon emissions in our county and 60% statewide. So instead of saving the environment by doing this, the data's in, we're killing the environment by not building housing. And so I think, you know, we should see numbers and see data and see experience and make sure that that overrides portions of our ideology. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just, you know, what I think a scientist should do. And I think it's what human beings who want to be ethically consistent should do.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I just think we disagree because I mean, hundreds of units the city of Santa Barbara has built. I don't think it's fair to say they have not built housing prior to 2013. Yeah, we went like 40 years without building apartments.
That's my point, Josh. You can't not build any private apartment buildings for 40 something years and have that not create a nightmare of a rental market. And it's gonna take some production to turn that around.
Right. But affordable by design though, Doss, like we know that term does not exist in this town because those little studios, those apartments are outrageously expensive. And we know the ones at the neighborhood with Cumbre Plaza are going to be really high end, you know? And so I think you've sort of made it clear. I guess the only point is 700 units versus 2,000. We're never going to get the 2,000 if it's not a specific plan. And instead we go with 700 by 2,000.
I mean, why? I mean, the city says the other parts of the property are in a long-term lease. So I don't understand why, you know, the case has not been made why a specific plan would be superior to incentivizing those investors to come together. Why would that be superior to actually just approving the Taylor project? Approving the Taylor project would tell the investors that they would have some uncertainty to build more units. And I think it would be a much more powerful incentive than a specific plan. A specific plan might be appropriate too. I'm not opposed to a specific plan on the non-Taylor portion of La Cumbre Plaza. But I don't want to fund something that nobody can tell me will actually, you know, speed up housing production. When I'm supposed to be, my job is to allocate money that speeds up housing production.
Well, could you make a case that it'll speed up the Taylor project, but slow down? Not funding the specific plan will speed up the Taylor project, but slow down the potential for those 2,000 units total.
I think it is unclear. But what was clear was that the property owner was opposed to having a specific plan foisted on them, and made the case that it was going to slow down their development, which was not the purpose of the grant. It was the opposite of the purpose of the grant.
All right.
So
we'll see.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to say that I question the intention of the planners, but I think that the city and the city's top leadership, both staff and council, are going to have to make a decision who they want to fight. This is something like this is not going to be a kumbaya. They have to decide, are we going to fight the people who want to produce housing, or are we going to fight the people who are opposed to producing housing? One way or another, this is going to end up in court. One way or another, it's going to be a bloody fight. And the city has to decide, are they on the side of housing or on the side against housing?
Yeah.
And I'm on the side for housing.
Well, I think the city's on the side for housing too. I think everyone is on the side of housing.
I wonder, Josh, I wonder if that's the case, why they seem to be gearing up to oppose the Taylor's moves.
Well, I mean, they're planners. They don't want to have a developer project dictate what they want to what they went to school for, what their professional job is, which is to be urban planners, and they don't want to feel like, man, the Taylor project is going to move.
So they don't want somebody who produces an application that conforms to all the rules that are on the books right now to have their application processed by the rules that are on the books right now.
Well, I mean, that's a philosophical thing. I could hand you $100 right now, right? Or I could say, Doss, I'm going to hand you 500 in a year. Okay. And sure, you can take the 100, but there's some benefit into waiting and taking the 500. And I think that's what the city planners are thinking about. And the other part of it is, maybe from a statewide perspective, that project is cool, but it hasn't been reviewed and there are height limit issues. And so the city's going to have an ability to fuss with the project. It isn't as though this thing's going to get built. But I think you've made it clear. You're the elected. You have to make those decisions, and you did what you did. And I think that we're going to probably hear more about it. I just sort of feel like it's a DOS that I don't know. I feel like, I mean, I know the housing, everything you said, I agree with, but I
just really want there to be housing, Josh. And I don't, I think there's enough outstanding questions of why wouldn't you just try to process this application? Why wouldn't you believe state law when state law says that certain projects like this do not apply to height limits? That's what state law says, right? So
yeah, but I mean, yeah, we need to move on.
And you can. This community. This is where the city has to choose the side, right? If you actually want a project and you want this housing, why wouldn't you choose the side of what state law says and what the property owner is trying to create? Right? If you really want the housing, why wouldn't you do that? So, that's what I think is the hard decision here. And
I mean, it sounds a little bit like assembly member DOS, quite frankly. I mean, it's an argument for redevelopment and ending the redevelopment agency so that money could go for what it was intended. And it's not that you're wrong, and it's not, I mean, it is what it is, but it just feels like a state argument and not, the IV kid DOS argument, who's, balancing the housing versus the need for this community to be what people love about it. And the housing issue is, 700 units. Let's build it. 2030, it's done, whatever. But what about the rest of the housing that could have been there? And I see what you're saying, which is, but they didn't present an application that says that you felt like, hey, let's fund it, because there's no guarantee that that's actually going to happen. So that makes sense. It
wasn't just a guarantee, is we could fund with this money actual production of housing. And that's what most of the monies were awarded to, is production of housing or funding for housing projects to have the kind of transportation connections and or electric charging to be a part of the solution. And, this was a very large amount of money. The question whether a specific plan is good or not, that's a complicated question, and one that I'm happy to participate in, and I'm, not 100% decided on. But whether the application would speed up housing, they offered no evidence of that. And it would be dishonest for me to hand money over $1 million to something that could slow down housing when the money's supposed to be to speed up housing.
All right. So let's move on. That's a good, healthy discussion on one item. Das, I want to ask you, you say you have a lot going on for, already early in 2023. What's on your mind right now as far as the issues? I know some of the headlines are the county and the ambulance contract. We've got community choice energy, or that may not be the exact term, but we've got a shift in how we use energy and electricity. What's on your agenda to start off the first part of this year?
Well, first of all, I have definitely the ambulance contract on my mind, because this is a once in a generation, maybe once in a lifetime decision of what is the future of our ambulance protection in the county. We have, for this first time, a competitive bid. So first time ever a competitive bid, because the Board of Supervisors asked for there to be a competitive bid. There is essentially a difference of opinion of whether the awarding body that we empowered awarded according to the criteria. And so the board is probably going to be looking at that. I can tell you that the board has really wanted this to mean innovation and improvement of services and an integration of services for the people. We want to have a system that is 21st century, and is not stuck in another age. And so that's why this is where the integration of a lot of things that we've been working on for a long time, improvement of cell to 911 system, the integrated call center for all fire agencies in the county, so that you would get the first available resource, no matter what side of a border that you would happen to be on. And then the ambulance. So those three things we hope will integrate into a system where you get better service. And then, of course, you got to have your mind on energy markets if you're wanting to, number one, make sure that we're providing energy at affordable rates for folks, but number two, that we're doing a higher degree of renewable energy. And so, as you know, the county, as well as most of the cities in the county of Santa Barbara, joined a community choice aggregator. At the time, it was called Monterey Bay Community Power. Now it's called Central Coast Community Energy, 3CE. And 3CE, I'm the vice chair. It's a large entity that runs between here and all the way up through Santa Cruz, Monterey, San Benito, and San Luis Obispo County. We have successfully provided energy for the past few years at rates between 20 and 40% less than PG&E and 2% less than Southern California Edison. But we're also on track to hit a higher degree of renewables than the utilities as well, because the whole purpose of doing this is going back to bring our ideals in alignment with our actions, right? Is to really make a bigger difference and fight climate change locally. We also provide really great electric vehicle incentives. So people, your viewers should really look if they live in Goleta, Carpinteria, the unincorporated area, or North County, they really should look at our electric vehicle incentives. They're substantial. For a non-income qualified person, they're $2,500 per vehicle. For an income qualified folks, they're even more. Meaning for a low income folks to get a electric vehicle. We also cover electric charging parts and labor if you want to install an electric charger in your home or business. We've had a challenging year because the war in Ukraine has definitely meant natural gas prices are all over the map. But that's just emboldened us to, and it's also been, challenging with renewables because some folks are now getting paid more for renewables than they were a couple of years ago because of the volatility of the energy markets. So we've had to find some new sources, and I'm excited to say there's great stuff, including a compressed air storage facility, because storage is really the name of the game to make sure your energy mix is greener, because most of the grid is green during the day, and then after 4 p.m. when people use more energy, it gets a lot dirtier. So we're participating in a large storage facility and looking at purchasing 200 megawatts of compressed air storage, which will really enable us to shift our load onto the greenest part of the day and make a difference for the world.
Yeah, that's great. Great update. Along the lines of the Board of Supervisors, a little bit of a political question here. You're serving with, she's 2nd District Supervisor, Laura Capps now. And I don't want to dig up any old drama, but what's your outlook serving with her? And I just will say that everyone gets along well now, but not too long ago, you were framed about the cannabis discussion in a very negative way by her campaign. And that was, war. I guess all's fair in war. She's trying to take her seat, but she framed you as not a good person,
Right.
Not an ethical person on the issue of cannabis. And that's going to linger forever with you because of that particular effort, So, what's going through your mind now? Now you got to serve with her through this bizarre, change of events with redistricting, and she moved, and now she can run. What's on your mind as you're about to serve with her?
Well, first of all, I think that it's got off to a good start. And I do think that the attacks that she made during the election were, cynically based. But we do agree on a lot of things. And we both care about particularly things like poverty and climate change. And I really want to work hard on concentrating on that because I think it's really important. And ironically, the cannabis taxes fund the things that we could do and have done on climate change and on poverty. So, so I think ultimately making substantive change does make you enemies, Josh. It really does. I mean, that's the one thing I could tell you that my young self that you remember was less aware of that I am now, is if you really want to be like, have everybody happy with you, you're really not going to make a difference.
No.
If you want to save the county fiscally, if you want to make sure that it can actually do the things that we believe in climate change, libraries, and in poverty, in law enforcement, then you got to actually get some things done. And that's not easy. But I can tell you things are going much better in terms of the whole community coming together on cannabis. I won't say that everybody's all cozy together yet. But just in the last couple months, we've gotten several growers to voluntarily embrace better odor control technology and ratified it in at least one cases in a hearing just a couple weeks ago. All 5 supervisors voted together, including Laura. And I think it means that we're making progress. Is it sort of perfect yet? No, but most of the Carpinteria Valley does not have odor. There's some pockets that do, and most growers are now embracing better technology to deal with it, and I will encourage that transition.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, nobody understands the importance of playing the rebel more than I do as a journalist, and I have people who love my work, and I have people who will be, happy when I'm not on this earth to a great degree. And I always say, if you're not offending people in your journalism, you're not writing about anything that matters, and so that, I think we are in alignment there, just in two different worlds, but they do cross paths from time to time.
Dude.
And when they do, it creates quite the moment for sure. Hey, on the cannabis thing, there's different ways to interpret all this stuff. I was reading some story about how there's an oversaturation of cannabis out there. And so the black market is sort of, it didn't put away the black market at all. Okay. It didn't put them out of business.
That's true.
Yeah.
And the data, though, indicates in the counties that have permitted it, the black market has been hurt more than the counties that didn't permit it.
Yeah.
So ironically, the black market is thriving more in the counties that did not permit legal marijuana.
Right. And we do know the projections are lower than what was expected from the county budget. So how are you feeling today? Like, people would say you fought on that hill for cannabis in the district when you ran for re-election. People will say that you died on that hill, and then now when we see that revenue is down or lower than what was expected, we still see a vibrant black market in some areas with cannabis. Do you have any regrets? Do you feel like, hey, I'm still on the right side of this, or what's on your mind?
Oh, I definitely think I'm still on the right side of this. I mean, you can't knock out the black market without legal marijuana. I mean, we tried that for a long time as a society and utterly failed. And so I think the best way to wound the black market is to take market share away. The low market price of marijuana is a challenge very much for legal growers. Yeah. And it's a temptation for legal growers to cut corners. And I, spend a lot of time encouraging folks, don't cut corners, stay on the straight and narrow. The market will change again, and that we, need to show that legal marijuana is better for society than the black market. But I think the benefits are super, super clear. That, the black market, especially in the southern part of the state, is a conduit for human pain. It's the infrastructure that the cartels use for human trafficking, for harder drugs, and the best way to fight it is for legal marijuana to take away market share from them. Yeah. And the other benefits of marijuana, that is the revenue that we use for good purposes in the county, especially our environmental work in the county, are clear. But the main thing is, are we doing better in fighting the black market in counties that have permitted marijuana? The answer is yes. Mm-hmm. There's pretty clear research on that. And it doesn't mean that it's not rough, though, on the people that are producing it. The market price is so low that it's hard for folks just to continue doing what they're doing and do everything according to the law. But I encourage them, they better do it, mm-hmm. because we have great enforcement staff out there. Particularly our sheriff's team is enormously vigilant, and we're going to do our best to keep people on the straight and narrow.
Yeah. I know you're tough. I've covered you over the years. I've seen you bounce back from political adversity. I've seen you rebuild, regroup. I've seen you lead. I've seen you be the darling of the party. I've seen you do it all. When you walk around, just today, like this cannabis thing, is this something that lingers over you, this reputation that you have among some, and those some are not everyone, as we know, because you keep getting reelected, but they are some powerful people, at least, to some degree in pockets of the community who will beat this narrative, right? That you are the cannabis bad guy. How do you think about that at all? Or is it,
Oh, sure.
is it your goal to shake
But
that?
I think it's people predominantly in areas that are not affected at all by cannabis, cynically using that. The fact is, Carpinteria reelected me by 15 points, and that was right in the middle of the fighting over marijuana.
Yeah.
So I think that says something. I think that most of the people in Carpinteria have moved on, and it's time for everybody to move on, because we want to solve these things, and fighting about it doesn't solve it, especially because the best way to be responsive between neighbors is to communicate between neighbors. And so, I think there's been positive developments. The agreement between the Coalition for Responsible Cannabis and carp growers is part of that. The encouragement that I've been given to folks and the commitments to change odor abatement plans is a part of that improvement. And the county wanting to move towards things like air monitoring and so forth. It's also a part of improving. We're not done yet. Not everything is in place. There's still half dozen or more in the Carpinteria Valley whose permit we have not yet fully adjudicated. We will continue to move towards improvement of the situation. I think ultimately history will bear out that legalized and taxed marijuana is far superior to the black market. And I just, challenge people, if you don't know where your weed's coming from, that it's probably your money is fueling bad stuff. And so, even if it might be a little bit more, at least it won't have pesticides, it won't have mold, it won't be funding drug cartels if you're buying your weed legally. So please do so.
Yeah, and just to wrap up here, this is 23, and then we got 2024, and I guess you'll be running again, that time.
I am definitely running for re-election in 2024. And
I'm a journalist, so people, tell me these things. And actually, Das, with the Cumbre Plaza story, a lot of people were like, we're going to take him out kind of stuff, do you keep your ear out for who might be running? Do you not care? Are you unbeatable? I guess I don't want you to say that because that will come back to haunt you, but do you worry about an opponent? I mean, we have some people who are like actively looking to get somebody to challenge you. And Laura was probably, she's one of the most popular people in town, and she couldn't do it. So, do you think about who's next?
Sure. I'm prepared, and I will be ready to get into a re-election fight if necessary. I'd rather concentrate on doing the county work. That's definitely what I feel is better for the people. But I was able to get reelected even when a CAPS was running against me. So I think it's going to be hard for someone to find an opponent of that caliber.
And last question, we're both dads. How are your kids doing? I did see you over the holidays at some events. How's the family life going?
Awesome.
Mhm.
The best cure for the stress of politics is an amazing 7 and 4-year-old daughter. Ash and Kaya are incredible little human beings that I snorkel with, that I backpack with, that I snowboard with, and they're great little adventurers. And of course, the best and the most common thing is read with. These little girls, they're so awesome. They love Lord of the Rings and Narnia and Les Miserables. These girls are really cool.
And how's Johnny?
Johnny's doing good. Both her clinical work as a psychologist is going well, and she has a business as a diversity, equity, inclusion consultant, and that's going well for her as well. So these are exciting times. The world is changing. Sometimes it looks like a perilous future, but the world is changing for the better on most things as well.
All right, Doss Williams, I really appreciate your time and your ability to indulge me. I think that our relationship for 20 plus years, actually longer than that, because we went to Ivy school together for a while, allows me some liberties here to ask you some tough questions, so I appreciate your patience and being on the show. And
Thank you.
Look forward to talking to you again. Take care.
Right on. See you, Josh.
Bye.